It's no secret that teletherapy speech-language services soared during the pandemic. Telepractice use among SLPs jumped from just 3.9% before the pandemic to 88% in 2021. And while teletherapy services are not quite as prevalent now as they were at the height of the pandemic, we're still seeing many turn to teletherapy for its convenience and its accessibility. And for good reason. We are also seeing a huge increase in the number of children needing services. One analysis found a 110% increase in speech disorder diagnoses in children aged 0 to 12 in 2022 compared to pre-pandemic. So we are seeing all of these children needing services, and when our families and schools are struggling to find enough local SLPs to serve their needs, then teletherapy is a viable option to serve those gaps. I'm speech-language pathologist Carrie Clark, and in today's episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast, we are going to dive into exactly how to make the most of virtual speech therapy sessions so we can work on closing those gaps one child at a time. So, welcome to the podcast. If you are new here, this is a weekly podcast that I do. I also record these live inside my membership site, The Hub, which is where you can find access to our discussion board where we have conversations and we support each other. And also all of our therapy materials are in there, all of our therapy plans and pathways. And we'll be talking about some of that today as well. Hey, Suzanne, welcome. This was kind of a surprise recording. Usually I do these in the afternoons, but my husband is homesick today and I'm taking him to the doctor later. So I wanted to jump in now and get this recorded. So welcome, Suzanne. If you have any questions, you can stick those in the chat as we go along. All right, so I'm going to start off today with a story about how not to do teletherapy, and this is a cautionary tale from my own experiences. So when I had my private practice right after leaving the public school system, one of the things that I did to get more clients and to fill out my caseload was to do teletherapy. And I did it through a big company, a big organization. And I was insecure about my teletherapy skills, and I wanted to just kind of prove that I could do it. So what I tried to do is I tried to go it alone without getting support, without asking for help, and without trying to really make a connection with the school that I was working with. So I'm in Missouri. I was working with a school in California. So obviously not something I'm going to go visit in person, but I didn't want to bother anyone, right? I just wanted to get in there, do my job and be done and not have to bother the teachers or the staff or put more work on them. And so what I did was I had several kids that I was working with varying degrees of success. Some of them went really well. Some of them just kind of sat there staring at the screen, and I didn't have an adult sitting there with them to help. And so I would just kind of talk at them and nothing would really get done. And it was not effective therapy, let me tell you. But I had this one kid who was doing really, really well, and I can't remember what skills we were working on, but I remember I was just working on what was in the IEP, and I remember getting him to the point where I was ready to dismiss, and I felt so good about the fact that I had helped this child and solved all his problems all on my own. Good for me, little baby speech therapist Carrie. And so I emailed the teacher and I said, hey, I'm ready to dismiss. He's doing great. Let's schedule the meeting. And the teacher replied back, well, what about his lisp? And I kid you not, guys, I didn't know he had one. And so this is not entirely on me. It is, but it's not entirely on me because the lisp was not in the IEP. So they gave me an IEP that didn't include the fact that he had a lisp. And also the connection between us was not good. The audio quality was terrible. And so I couldn't hear that he was lisping. There was no way for me to know. But the part that is on me is that I didn't reach out and try to get that connection with the teacher and to ask questions and to build a relationship at the beginning so that, maybe I would have known that he had a lisp. So needless to say, we went back to the drawing board. And we were able to get that lisp figured out. And I was able to grow as a professional and to be able to say, okay, this is not the same as I go down to the first grade classroom, I grab Johnny, I bring him to the speech room, and I just fix what's wrong, right? And I would argue that probably doesn't work great either. We also need to be working as a team with our kids that we see in person, but especially when we are looking at teletherapy, we are connecting with a child in a very different way than we are when we have them in person. And if we try to just make our teletherapy look like our in-person therapy, then we're going to hit some roadblocks and we're not going to be as effective as if we reconfigure and think about this differently. Okay? So the strategies I'm going to share with you today are how we can approach therapy in a way that is systematic and is supporting these students, but is specifically designed to work for teletherapy. Okay, so we actually have several courses inside our hub about teletherapy, and you guys are welcome to pop in there and check those out. But today I'm just going to share a few specific strategies that I think are the most impactful when we're working with teletherapy. All right, I see a bunch more of you hopping on. Welcome. Sorry I didn't get this one scheduled. This was a pop-in because I've got my husband home sick and I'm going to take him to the doctor later. So you guys are welcome to pop in, stay as long as you can, and ask questions in the chat. We'll take those as we go along. Okay, so teletherapy strategy number 1 is to work with the adults in the child's life. Okay, learn from my mistakes. Don't do it the way I did it. Seeing the child once a week on a screen ain't gonna cut it. There's my Midwest roots coming out. The best therapy happens as a part of a cohesive whole team approach. So this means working with the families and working with the teachers, working with caregivers, after school care, anyone who spends time with this child, because we are not going to fix a problem that is communication based in 1 hour a week or 30 minutes a week or whatever it is you have. We're just not, because they are communicating all day long throughout their environment. And just having the correct communication skills once a week doesn't make an impact. So when you are doing teletherapy in particular, since we are on this screen, which makes it another degree of separation from us to the kid, right? It is so crucial that we meet with parents and caregivers and teachers and educators and other therapists, and that we are staying in communication about the child's progress and about the child's life. Because there's going to be things going on in a child's life that you won't know if you are not boots on the ground in the building with them, right? Maybe there's something going on in the school building and you don't know because all you did was log into a call and somebody logged the kid in on the other end, right? So that communication with the team becomes so much more important when we are looking at teletherapy versus in-person therapy, okay? So your time during the therapy sessions should be spent on figuring out which strategies work for that individual. And if possible, we should also be spending our virtual time coaching and training the adults in their life on how to implement those strategies throughout the rest of their day, okay? Now, I know that's not always possible. I know for this particular school I was working with, they would literally plop the kid in front of the screen. I wouldn't even see the adult's face. They would never even like, hey, how's it going? They were just, suddenly the child was there and I might see a body in the background and then that was it. And I couldn't get anyone to just sit and talk to me, right? And so I understand there are limitations, right? We don't always have the staff to have an adult on screen. We don't always have the manpower. But especially if they're logging on from home, you can set that expectation with parents. Hey, this is a parent session 2. We're working all as a team. So I'd love to have you on the call if you're available. And if not, we can schedule it for a time when it works better for you, right? So if you can, we want to push that direction. If not, though, I understand. So you can still spend your sessions working on finding those strategies, but then you need to come up with a system that is going to be effective to communicate those strategies to the rest of the team and to get feedback from them on how it's working. Because if we're just sending home our homework and saying, hey, don't forget to do this, don't forget to do this, and it's never happening, then that's a waste of everyone's time and resources, right? So we need to make sure that not only are we communicating, but we are asking for follow-up. We are asking them to be a part of the process and to have an open communication both ways, okay? So that's that's strategy number one. And honestly, that is a really, really big one. A lot of times the questions that I hear about teletherapy is where they say, okay, well, I've got this kid that I'm seeing via teletherapy and he doesn't even look at the screen. He doesn't even realize I'm a real human being. He's just off stimming or playing with things in the background and I can't get anything done because I can't get them to do the things. And my answer to that is that's not the right kind of teletherapy to be doing with that child. Because you're right, a lot of kids are not going to respond to a face on a screen in the same way that they would a person in the room. So at that point, your therapy is not one-to-one speech therapist to child. Your therapy is parent training, educator training, para training, whoever you have access to, training them on how to use those strategies and then giving them feedback on the call. Oh yeah, that was perfect. Next time, let's do it a little bit more like this, right? And giving them that extra support so that they can implement the strategies, right? So this is what I mean. It's not just, we can't just take our speech therapy that we're doing in person and just plop it on a video screen. And I think that's what happened a lot during the pandemic at the very beginning, where all of a sudden everyone had to do online therapy, is we just tried to make it look exactly like in-person therapy, and with varying levels of success, right? Some kids can sit down and do that, and that's great. A lot of kids can't. And even if they can, then it goes back to, well, how much is your 30 minutes a week really making an impact in the rest of their week? Unless they are a super self-driven child who really wants to fix that problem, it's not going to do much, right? So work with the adults in the child's life. That is strategy number one. All right, any questions in the hub so far? All right, so then we have teletherapy strategy number two, which is to use a systematic approach to teaching skills. So I love me some boom cards. They're super fun. If you're not familiar, boom cards are interactive little online screen things that you can do during your teletherapy sessions to practice different skills. And those are fun and they are engaging, but they don't always lead to a cohesive strategy, right? Our therapy is going to be more effective if we are following a systematic approach that is moving them from start to finish, instead of just finding cutesy one-off activities that work well on teletherapy. And my big point here is this doesn't have to be so much work, okay? One of the studies, and I didn't cite it, so I don't remember what it was, but one of the studies I read was saying that, I think it was ASHA, did a survey and found that teletherapists were spending more time planning per session than in-person therapists. And I think it's this piece of, oh, well, I mean, we're just on a screen. That's not very fun and engaging. So I need to spend the extra time and money to find these boom cards and these activities that are going to make the screen more fun, make this activity more fun. Okay. And it doesn't have to be like that. That's not the goal. The goal should be finding a systematic approach. And then I'm going to give you some ideas for keeping it fun on our next strategy. But you have to start with the systematic approach to therapy, not start with the fun. Okay. And I think that's what we end up doing. You know, we scroll through Teachers Pay Teachers or boom cards or whatever, and we go, oh, that looks fun. And so we grab that. So instead, we want to flip to thinking first about the strategy. Okay. And so the teletherapists that we have inside the hub that are using our speech and language kids framework are using our pathways and our plans. And they are using that as the structure for the therapy. And then from there, they're finding fun activities to keep them engaged, right? So if you're not familiar with our new framework, the pathways are these larger plans for specific challenges. So somebody asked me this morning inside the hub for, I have this child and they can't retell past events. They're all over the place. They're providing information that isn't even related. What do I do? Okay, well, we have a therapy pathway for, I think it's called sequencing and retelling. Okay, and so we start first by, can you do some basic sequencing? And this particular child, she said, could do sequencing, but then we lose it after that. Okay, so the bigger picture for the pathway is start with sequencing, and then it's answering questions about past events. So can you recall the past event? And then it's starting to retell the past event with the sequencing skills and the answering questions and putting all that together in being able to retell. Okay, so that's a pathway, But that pathway is made up of several individual skills. And so those are our therapy plans, which are step-by-step workbooks for each skill. Okay? So for our teletherapists that are using this framework inside the hub, they are able to just share the workbook on their screen, right? So you open the workbook on your screen, because all our stuff's digital, and you just screen share. And then some of those platforms, depending on what you're using for your teletherapy, some of the platforms will even let you write on the screen. So you can, there's like annotation tool or drawing tool. It's called different things. But you can even go in and actually write on the worksheet and fill it out in real time with the student. And then this forms what we call the drill portion of our session, where you can find those right strategies. Okay, so we do drill and we do practice. And so the drill portion is what strategies work for this child. Okay, so we pull up our answering questions and we start going through this and we drill questions about past events. And we say, okay, how are we doing in terms of getting answering these questions about a past event? You know, you've picked something that is, you know what happened so that you can tell if they're doing it correctly, and you figure out where they are and you go, aha, this is what we need to work on. Okay. Then we move to the practice part, and maybe that's practicing during our session, but it should also be practicing at home, practicing in the classroom. So now we're either training the staff that's with us on the call or sending that communication to say, hey, I think the thing that's going to help him be able to retell is we need to first work on being able to answer questions about the past events. So here's some strategies, or just email them the page that you've been working on from the actual therapy plan workbook and just have them practice that in between your sessions. And then the next time you get on a call, you can say, okay, how are we doing on this? You try it again and you go, wow, you're doing really well at this time. Let's step it up to the next level. And then you work through the plans. Okay. So the idea here for teletherapy strategy number 2 is shifting the mindset from I need to find something fun to I need to follow a system. And once you have followed a system, and it doesn't have to be mine, it can be any system. But once you have a step-by-step idea of what you want to work on and how you want to break it down, then you can figure out, okay, now what can we do to layer on another piece on top of this that's going to keep it fun? Okay? All drill and no play makes teletherapy dull. A dull boy? I don't know. Anyway, strategy number 3 then is to keep it fun with reinforcers. Okay, so we want to keep our sessions fun and fresh, not by coming up with new crazy activities every time, but by switching up our reinforcers. So the therapy material, what we're actually using to teach the skills and to drill the skills, is staying the same, because consistency is key, right? Our kids need consistency. They don't need novelty on these therapy materials, right? They need novelty to stay engaged, but they don't need a new way to present the skill every session, because that is hard to track and hard to follow. And what they really need is it to be the same every time. Okay. So after you've introduced the skill, then now we can make the practice more fun by introducing some reinforcers and that are specifically related to their interests, right? And this is where we get to get creative and fun. But again, it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to go on Teachers Pay Teachers and find new activities every week. And it doesn't have to take a long time. There are plenty of things you can do that are very low prep in this regard. And I'm going to give you some ideas that will allow you to keep it fun without adding more work to your plate. Okay, so my first idea for fun reinforcers is AI, artificial intelligence. There are so many cool things happening with artificial intelligence right now. And the key here is that it allows you to customize something to the child's specific interests. So inside our hub, we have our AI-powered custom material generators. And those are little bots that I built using ChatGPT as the engine. And it will create you a custom word list for speech therapy, or a reading passage, or a social scenario, or an image. And you get to enter what skills you're working on and what the child's interests are. So you could say, hey, I need a picture with a whole bunch of R words that is Minecraft themed. And then you can just pull that picture up onto your screen during your teletherapy session. And we can go, hey, let's find all the things that are silly about this picture and talk about them using our good R sound. And we've got a very fun, engaging activity that took all of, 10 seconds for us to generate the picture because you just have to type in the things. And so that those tools inside the hub will do that for you. You can also use ChatGPT or some other AI tool, that whatever AI tool you like, and you just have to craft the prompt to ask for what you need, right? So AI powered tools like the ones inside the hub or any other tools that you have are great because you can target a skill and you can base it around their interests. You can also ask AI for an activity. So you can say, hey, I've got this box of Legos and I need to work on this skill. Give me a fun activity that I can do with that. Okay, Legos isn't a good one because it's teletherapy, but you know what I mean. You can say, hey, I'm on a teletherapy session. I need to work on this skill. Here's what I have access to. And then it'll give you some ideas for activities. Obviously, you still need to use your brain and make sure those are appropriate for that student, but those are really great ways to get some ideas. Okay. Fun reinforcer activity number 2 is playing a clip from a YouTube video that's about their favorite topic and then talking about it. And of course, using their skill while you're talking about it. This one does require a little bit of advanced screening to make sure you're playing appropriate video clips. But this could be something that you spend one of your planning days saying, okay, I'm just going to go through and watch a whole bunch of YouTube clips and just save those videos onto a playlist so that you have a pre-generated playlist that you can use that you know you've screened. And maybe you have, a Minecraft one and you have a cooking one and you have a playing with toys one. And so you just have a couple different playlists and you just pull up one of those during your teletherapy, right? And so you could pull up the video, play a little clip, and then say, hey, let's talk about it. What did you see? What did you like? Wasn't that funny? And that can be the reinforcer while you're working on your skill, okay? Another one is online games. Again, go search around, look for online games, and just see if you can find some that look like they would be good for teletherapy. Some of the teletherapy platforms actually have games built in, so you can use the pre-built ones. Those are great as well. Now, one of the ones I like is there are puzzles on the Highlights Kids website. So if you just type Highlights Kids games and puzzles into Google, it'll pull it up. And you can see they have all these little like hidden object puzzles or other kinds of puzzles. And so what I do is I pull those up on my screen and I share my screen with my student. And then I do not give them control of the mouse because that is something you can do in a lot of the platforms is to give them control. I don't want them to have control because I want them to have to talk to me and use their skill. So I say, I'm going to control it. I need you to tell me where that hidden object is when you find it. And they go, oh, it's right there. And I say, oh, I can't see where you're pointing. You got to describe it. And so then I have them describe to me where the hidden picture or hidden object is in the picture using their skill. So we're working on the communication piece, right? So that's a super easy one as well. And then finally, you could always just do show and tell. Have them grab something from their house or their classroom or wherever they are and show it to you. And they can be playing with it while you guys are working on the skill. Right? So those are all different ways that you can keep it fun and engaging and reinforcing without having to buy a bunch of boom cards, find a new activity for each skill every session. Okay? All right. I see a ton of you in here. Welcome, guys. I'm excited that you were here, even though I popped this in as a surprise. Let me know in the chat, how are these strategies sounding to you? Have you tried any of them? Do you have any questions? You guys can pop in there and ask questions. All right, so that is our 3 main strategies, okay? So working with the adults to make sure there is carryover throughout the day, using a systematic approach to teaching those skills and starting with that first, and then finding some very easy, quick and easy reinforcers. I will say when I was doing this, I had a Pinterest board that was where I saved all of my online games that I liked and my video clips. I think I still have that one up. If you go to our Pinterest page, I think there's a link to the teletherapy one. You can actually see some of those. But yeah, those are great resources as well, where you can save some links and have those ready to go for your sessions. Okay. If you would like some resources that you can use for teletherapy, like I've been talking about, we have our new Speech and Language Kids framework that is basically going to just walk you through everything you need in order to teach a skill from start to finish. So we have screening checklists that you can fill out. We have progress monitoring tools that you can fill out with the team to get information about what that looks like in the classroom. What are they struggling with? And then from there, those lead straight into our therapy pathways, which are those overarching plans for specific challenges. So a sequencing and retelling pathway or a stuttering pathway. And those pathways then are made up of the individual plans, which are the skills you teach to get there. Okay, so all of that's located inside the hub. And then, of course, we have our custom material generators, those little AI-powered bots that you can use as well. And all that's inside the full membership at the hub. So you can find that at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. But if you're not ready to commit to the full plan, we do have a free plan that just has the discussion board. So you can pop in there and ask questions, and we can share our resources, share our ideas for games and different activities that are fun to do on teletherapy, but don't take a lot of prep time. So check that out as well. We've got all kinds of resources depending on what you need, and I'm in there helping as well. So I hope to see all of you in there. Thank you to all of you who watched live today, and we will be back at you next week, hopefully next Monday, with a new podcast. I don't have it picked out yet, so if you have any ideas, pop those in the discussion board as well. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week on the Speech and Language Kids podcast.